At the end of May, I spent a couple of days at the European Forum for Christian LGBTQ Groups. And there I met a lot of interesting people. And one of these people is Benjamin.
My name is Benjamin Hermann, which is tough to pronounce in other languages. I'm 24 years old. I work for the Reformed Church here in Zürich for the LGBT parishhood. And I study theology in Zürich to become a pastor someday. Yeah. And also I'm a transgender man.
Let's first get a little overview of what it's like living as an LGBTQI plus Christian in Switzerland.
Like the Reformed Church in general is really open because we don't have like one person who's telling us what to believe in, and every parishhood can at least in some sense think for themselves. There are some congregations that talk to one another and make decisions with one another, but we're really we can work it out on ourselves and think for ourselves. So that's a good thing for LGBT Christians here. And then the Reformed Church of Zürich, because Zürich is the hotspot for queers in Switzerland. So there was a project about an LGBT parishhood, and they felt, well, yeah, we have to do this because we accept queers in our churches. We have a lot of queer pastors in our churches, and we want queers and also the general society to know about that. So that's how the queer parishhood in Zurich kind of came to be.
A queer parishhood sounds really amazing. Benjamin shares a little bit about what they are and will be doing.
Well, we're just starting now, so we're kind of in the pilot phase of the project. We want to do services which are aimed at queer people but also at allies. And we just want to create a safe space where queers can live their faith without being afraid of persecution, and also without being afraid of getting outed by somebody else, or having to out themselves, or having to explain themselves to somebody who doesn't really understand being queer or being transgender or non-binary. It's not really clear what exactly we're going to be doing, but one thing we are sure is that we will have special ceremonies for transgender people who change their name, started transitioning, so they can feel that it's like a baptism, but it's not a baptism for trans people. We want to have Bible study groups. I would like to also have a youth group for Christian teenagers who are queer, where they can live their queerness and faith openly. And also I do a lot of work in the education department. So I go to confirmation classes and speak about being queer and studying theology and being spiritual. So yeah, it's a lot of different things we're doing.
Benjamin feels so strongly about this, so I had a suspicion that he might have had bad experiences with church himself, which led him to do this. But I was wrong.
My journey is quite different to the journeys I know of other people here in Switzerland. A lot of people, they belong to an evangelical church, they figure out, oh, I'm queer, and then they kind of leave church and deconstruct and reconstruct their faith. For me, it was I didn't really believe because I was a science nerd, and people never tried to explain to me that science and God can come together. And so until I came out, faith was not a big topic because I just couldn't move it into my everyday life. And then I had my coming out, and suddenly it came to me that God created me just as I am, and created me to be in their creation and be Benjamin. And I felt wow, there's something that's holding me, that there's something that's protecting me. So from then on, I kind of had the at-home faith. And then I met my girlfriend, who is really active in church, and realized, well, church does good things as well. So then I became active in church. So my story is kind of opposite to the ones I know from a lot of other queer people here.
Lastly, Benjamin shares a little bit about the workshop he was holding here at the European Forum.
A lot of workshops tend to be in your head, and I wanted the workshop to be more in your fingers and to trigger creativity, to say so. So I decided that we do a Lenten veil or a patchwork of diversity, where everybody could create a patch that showcased something that brought life to them or made them happy or kind of got them energy, and helps them to go through life as a queer Christian person. So after we created that, I will put them all back together into one big patchwork, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be really diverse and colorful and just like life is chaotic.